Thrifting has steadily been on the rise, and you can easily scroll YouTube and see the plethora of Thrift with Me videos. But a lot of the times, the curated, cutesy little boutique like stores that they show on these videos are not real thrifting. Thrifting in reality, and at least where I'm from in the US, can be pretty messy, pretty chaotic, and you can run into some pretty unhinged and crazy people. So, today I wanted to discuss what thrifting is and is not, and how to slay the proverbial thrift dragon. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of times when I see these thrift hauls, I feel so much FOMO and jealousy of the really delicious vintage items that people are able to find. And I know a lot of times the reality doesn't meet the expectation when it comes to entering thrifting and your expectations of what you should find at a thrift store versus what actually ends up happening. So, today I wanted to discuss how to master thrifting and get the dream wardrobe you deserve. Grab your tea or coffee and let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel, The United Colors of Style, where the divas are into details. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So, first and foremost, I wanted to define what thrifting is versus other forms of secondhand shopping. First off, we'll start with vintage shopping. That's your more curated, boutique like store that has a very kind of nice aesthetic. Everything's organized. It's run like a normal shop, except someone went out and kind of curated this secondhand selection. And usually with these type of stores, you kind of don't have to do as much of the legwork. A lot of times, most of the items are in great condition, and you don't really have to vet as much as you would with other forms of secondhand shopping. And of course, this is reflected in the price. It's usually a lot more expensive than, say, thrifting. And speaking of thrifting, that's the obvious topic of today's video and what I wanted to distinguish from other forms. Thrifting is everything but the kitchen sink, basically. You can have any type of item in any type of condition, and it's really all on you to do the legwork to figure out like what the condition of the item is in. Like, does it have holes, stains, rips, etc., which we'll get into later. People can donate any and everything, and it shows in the selection, but at the same time you can find some really beautiful vintage pieces. It's just you have to search a lot harder. And then last honorable mention are flea markets. And flea markets are usually your more like outdoor booth stall pop-up type thing, where it's usually like 50% clothing, but also 50% like home goods and accessories and stuff. So sometimes you can find some cool stuff there. But I, again, usually stick to just the conventional thrifting at a larger chain thrift store, which we'll be discussing today. I wanted to get clear on the terminology because a lot of people use thrifting interchangeably within these different situations, especially with vintage shopping. And I think it's important for you to know the difference because if you go into a vintage store expecting thrifting prices, unfortunately, you are going to be disappointed. Just like if you go into a normal conventional thrift store, at least in the US, and see, all the hordes of stuff that you need to look through and the variation and condition, you might also be surprised. So I think it's important to always define terms and make sure everybody's clear on what to expect. Now that we've clearly defined the terms, let's get into what to avoid and what to look out for. And we'll start with what to avoid. Number one is definitely shoes. And I'm not saying avoid all shoes because you can find some really, 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 really cute thrifted shoes. It's just there's such a high probability of dry rot and basically the shoe disintegrating and falling apart. And what's so not fair about it is you'll try it on in the store and it won't fall apart, and then you bring it home and you wear it maybe once, maybe twice, and then it completely falls apart. On a personal note, one time I was going out with friends and I was wearing thrifted shoes and it literally fell apart. They had to help me waddle back to my car. So it's a very real reality, and I just want everyone to be kind of aware of that. Next up is to make sure that you inspect your clothing really, really well. There have been so many times where I found cute sweaters and I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. I bring it home and then I find a hole or a stain or a rip. And sometimes I am personally not above cleaning and stitching and repairing my own clothing. Like, I actually find it very therapeutic to just turn on a YouTube video and sew it. But other times it's like so specific of a rip or a cut or a stain that I just can't deal with it and I can't fix it. And then you just kind of have to give up on it and the piece is just ruined, which is really, really sad. So just be aware and be very vigilant when you're looking and you're shopping. And then finally, I just want to warn you guys that it is super, super hard to find like a really good pair of vintage jeans. I don't know if it's just where I live and shop. It's just so, so hard. I don't know if it's because everyone else is also looking for the same jeans. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. But I just wanted to give you guys these overarching things to stay vigilant and watch out for, just so we can manage expectations and kind of level set before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to thrift. And quickly, I wanted to mention what I usually look out for or what I've had the most success in thrifting. And that's accessories like bags, scarves, and belts. But again, you have to inspect it very carefully for any unexpected rips, tears, or holes that aren't mendable or fixable. And definitely jackets and coats. I feel like that has been such a big part of my closet. I think 100% of all my winter wool coats are from the thrift store. So a huge, huge, huge source of pride for me. And I love every single one of them. So I highly recommend it. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of how to slay at thrifting. So, stage one is to strategize and to plan. And this requires some self reflection, a notebook, or your notes app on your iPhone. And basically, you need to take a step back and look at your wardrobe and think to yourself what you currently have versus your dream wardrobe and like what is in that gap to achieve your dream wardrobe. So go through and make a list of all the things that you're missing that you feel like are needed to kind of encapsulate your style and bring that dream into fruition. So, once you identify the missing pieces, once you understand what your wardrobe color palette is, and once you're able to kind of determine the silhouettes, the shapes, the textures, etc. I mean, you don't have to get too specific, but it's always good to have a clear understanding of what is and is not in your dream wardrobe, just so you don't end up falling prey to something that we'll talk about at the end of this video, which is kind of just like hoarding stuff that you kind of like but don't 100% like. So, once you have all of that planning out of the way, it's a lot easier to just go into thrifting with a very clear mind on what is most important to you. Thank you so much for watching and this is the fun part. So, first and foremost, go on Google, go on Reddit, and try to find the best thrift stores in your area. And I would suggest clearing a Saturday or a Sunday to dedicate solely to thrifting, because if the first thrift store isn't really serving and hitting as well, then you can go to a couple different ones and try your luck there. So I would highly recommend that. But once you do get into the thrift store, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but try to figure out the different sections where everything is and go section by section and look through each item, especially when you're starting out. After a while, when you become a more seasoned thrifter, you're kind of tuning your eye a little bit more to be able to find the items just by visually scanning. But I would really recommend, if you're just starting out, to go item by item on the racks. Definitely, as a pro tip, if there's a mirror nearby at the end of the aisle, then look through that area, even if it isn't an area that is your size or that you're interested in, just because people will pull really cute pieces and then put it back near the mirror when they're trying it on and it isn't working for them. And you can find some really nice stuff that maybe someone else didn't work for someone else but could work for you. Go through section by section, definitely try to figure out what works best. If it's a maybe, if you're like, maybe, maybe not, put it in the cart. Just put it in the cart. And then in the next section, when you're done finding and sourcing everything, you can try it on in front of the mirror. A lot of thrift stores, unfortunately, like don't have changing areas anymore. And so hopefully they'll have a mirror if you're lucky enough. Sometimes they've taken that away too. And as a pro tip, I would definitely recommend like having a friend take your picture, or if you're by yourself, then like using your front facing camera on your phone to kind of evaluate how it looks on you. But it's kind of a bummer how they have that. Yeah, you can exchange it in like 2 weeks usually, but still it's not really the best policy in my opinion. But yeah, you really have to like dig through, really be vigilant. Again, like I said in the first section, of the condition of the garment. Like you kind of need to stretch it out to look for holes, definitely try it on over your thin layers, and just have fun. Like, really look out for pieces that are more unique, funky, fun. Definitely focus on quality. That is a huge, huge component. Look at the material tag, look at the care tag. If it is dry clean only, are you actually gonna dry clean it? Like, these are important questions that you need to ask yourself and think about. And also, just really have fun on like finding fun accessories, like I mentioned before, fun coats, fun jackets. I usually always start with the coats and jackets just because I feel like that's what everyone's looking for, and I really want to just find what I like as soon as possible. But it is easy, like when you are thrifting, to kind of fall into this more scarcity mindset. So even if you try something on and if it isn't like 100% yes, then I would recommend not getting it, because then you're just going to end up redonating it after a while when you realize it wasn't really what you wanted for your dream wardrobe. So it's definitely easier said than done. I've made this mistake numerous times, but it's something to always keep in mind just so you're more mindful and you don't end up having to redonate things. Thank you so
So,
much for
stage three is all
watching
about
and stick.
evaluating.
And while you were doing some evaluating in the mirror at the thrift store, kind of seeing how it fit on top of your thin layers, now when you go home, you're able to not only try on the garment or the piece with clothes that you already own, but also without layers underneath. So that could be even more helpful in evaluating if you want to keep the piece or not. But it's really important that you go home and see how this piece integrates with your existing wardrobe. So, my rule of thumb is to make sure that the item goes with at least 3 outfits that I could see myself wearing on a day to day basis, and making sure that the color is similar to the color in like natural lighting, because in the thrift store, the lighting can be a little bit more harsh and maybe the coloring looks a bit different IRL versus in that harsher lighting. So just really being vigilant about, how does this garment feel on me? Is it something I could wear on a day-to-day basis? Does it make sense for me? Does it look good? Do I actually like it? And really trying to escape the scarcity mindset of, oh, well, it kind of works. It kind of makes sense. Maybe I should just keep it, because at the end of the day, it will most likely get rethrifted, which is what we kind of want to avoid with this. I really highly recommend keeping not only a running list of brands that you love to thrift, but also different textures, silhouettes, fabrics that you really find yourself gravitating toward. Because for me personally, I believe thrifting should be used as a tool to help us refine our personal style and try out different things, but it shouldn't be without intentionality. You should really be trying to keep a running list of things that you really love, instead of just aimlessly thrifting every single time, which can lead to more overconsumption. So, my final overarching thoughts are just to always think and reflect and refine. Thrifting is never going to be perfect. It's never going to be like finding the most amazing pieces every single time you go. It takes a lot of trial and error, but it's important to remember that quality matters, especially if you want to build a wardrobe with a certain level of longevity, especially to avoid clothes falling apart or getting messed up in the wash. So, just keeping these certain things in mind and just understanding that it is a marathon and not a sprint. And as always, we'll be ending today's video with an inspirational fashion quote. Today's fashion quote comes from the iconic Bianca Jagger. She states, "Style is knowing what suits you, who you are, and what your assets are. It's expecting it all." Thank you so much for watching and sticking around for the entire video. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!